I'm Counselor Allen, Chairperson of Neighborhood Business Development. I have Counselor Hogan, Counselor Caldwell, Counselor Green, Counselor Peniagua, President Hudson, and Counselor Schultz. And if you want, you can introduce yourself and who you have at the table with you, and then you can just jump right into your presentation. And Counselor Driscoll just walked in.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Jake Dishaw, Director of Code Enforcement.
Good morning, Madiha Salkage, Director of Permits.
You could just jump right in.
Okay. Yeah, you know, we've been through some tough times the last couple of years. We think this budget allows code enforcement to be successful. Moving forward, kind of climbing out of the pandemic. You know, as we know, permitting and housing safety and stability is very important for our residents, and I think all of you know just how important of a role that code enforcement plays in the community. And you know, sometimes we're able to problem solve and get through things very quickly and efficiently, and other times it's a lot more difficult than many people would think. But you know, that's why we think we need these resources that are in this budget. They help bolster our staffing levels to really where they probably were projected to be the budget before COVID. This is kind of what was potentially being proposed a couple of years ago now as we were diving into the lead ordinance. So it does, it gets our housing inspector levels up to where they need to be, especially given that we've redesigned our deployment on how our inspectors are deployed throughout the city in an equitable manner. But it also adds some capacity to our building inspectors as well, adding a position there. So that's pretty much it for the salary line and the personal services at the top. It kind of holds flat, but it does add some positions again to give us. We have 9 catchment areas for reference, and that's how our the territories are equitably designed. So they're not all. They used to be geographically the same as the construction debris schedule. That we were just in quadrants, and we had an equal amount of inspectors in every quadrant, which, as anybody knows, different parts of the city have different needs, and that just didn't make sense. So we went back and did historical data on inspections, complaints, permits, and we credit to MBD and Michelle Sapansky to design what we call these catchment areas. And it's based on a balanced workload of needs within our neighborhoods within the city. So that's how we're deployed. We have 9 catchment areas. So we have 14 housing inspectors. So the housing inspectors are deployed. There's 1 in every catchment. Then we have 3 regions similar to how SPD is kind of set up. We have a northwest, a southwest, and an east. So then we have a floater in each area as well. That gets us up to 12. Then we have an overall city floater, that's 13, and the 14th is assigned to the East Catchment area, which captures Syracuse University neighborhoods. And that's a new position that just came on from the university agreement that was just struck recently.
Jake, if I could ask real quick, so you, I remember when your predecessor's housing was in, we were talking about kind of switching to the catchment. When officially did it switch to the catchment style, and how?
It was one of the first things I did coming on as director. So I would say 2 years ago this summer. It was probably, Michelle, do you recall? Was it like July or August of 20? It was one of the first things I did. And it changed a little bit. I think the initial idea or concept was to have 21 different catchments. Well, one, we didn't have enough staff. So we kind of redeveloped that into 9 areas, which is still more than double what we had before. We had 4, which again, just wasn't, it didn't make sense. It'd be like assigning, you know, police or fire the same way, you know, just equally spreading out the team geographically into quadrants without looking at the needs of the city just didn't make sense. So this is the first time we've been, I think, equitably deployed to deal with the problems. And each neighborhood has different needs. You know, Sedgwick has different needs than the near west side, and same with the north side and the Tipperary Hill. Every neighborhood has unique needs, and we think we think this budget and allows us to have the capacity to respond to that in a fair and equitable manner.
And when you talked about that position for the inspector, but from the SU money, how long do you expect to have that funds in your budget?
Oh, that's a great question. Michelle, do you recall how long that agreement was for? 5 years?
5 years.
Okay. There's definitely a need for there's a lot of unique needs up in the neighborhood area. There was a recent fire up there recently. There's a lot of third floor issues, certificate of suitability issues, parking's a big one, but just quality of life. And that's what I mean by different neighborhoods having different needs. So the homeowners in that area, you know, living in and around student housing have, you know, different issues and different complaints and different challenges. So, you know, this will allow us to hopefully get a grasp of that, having an additional person that's able to respond to those sorts of complaints and challenges. But moving forward, it's probably something that we would look into putting into the budget, you know, into our budget that we're funding potentially, or continuing an agreement with the university to continue to carry that. You know, we have some other positions that are funded, like the county funds a position for what they call a TRA, which is a tenant responsibility agreement, which is in lieu of a cash security deposit. So we go out and do a pre-inspection, and if there's damages or issues, we do a post-inspection. So the county funds a housing inspector for that as well. So it'd be no different. It was something that we felt like was beneficial to the city and to the neighborhood. It's something that I would definitely want to continue to explore. But also, I think we're starting to create more revenue in our budget too. We've changed certificate of compliance from every 5 years to every 3, which is nearly doubling the revenue from that. But more importantly, it's getting us in those structures, you know, almost double the amount of time. And those are our 3-family structures and above, or any mixed use commercial with residential. So as small as one commercial space downstairs, 1 apartment above, all the way up to, you know, Brighton Towers or Skyline, and all the 3 families and up. So those are important inspections, and we're doubling the frequency nearly that we're doing those, but that's also nearly doubling the revenue. But also we've made a lot of foundational work to our rental registry program. We're hovering right around 50% compliance rate, but we're seeing a huge jump recently, mainly because of our digital transformation and how we're accepting applications and online payments. So through our permitting software, we've been able to leverage 24-hour a day access to apply and pay online. We had our largest month ever, where I think we collected 723 rental registry applications and payments in the month of March. It's over 100,000 in revenue in just 1 month. Now, in the grand scheme of the budget, that's not a whole lot, but when you're talking, that's nearly double the highest amount we've ever had in the history of the rental registry program. Like, that's pretty significant. And we've made foundational changes within the permit office. We've shifted our rental registry coordinator to the permit office to be more forward facing to the public. And we've retitled that from rental registry coordinator to periodic inspection coordinator, and they're kind of handling, they have an administrative aide, which is a civil service union position. Between the 2 of them, they're handling the day-to-day customer service for all periodic applications coming in to the city. So they're following up, they're working with inspectors, they're scheduling. So just a lot of good things happening that I think are putting us in position to continue to be successful and continue to build off where we stand today. Even going through the pandemic, we never shut down. You know, you talk to other municipalities in the county, they stopped doing inspections, they stopped collecting permits, they stopped everything. We did go home for a little bit, but we didn't stop doing, we did stop inspections for a little bit, mainly just because of the safety matter of it, but permits kept coming in, and we were set up digitally mainly because of the investment in previous budget years for our software that we have now to be remote, using cloud-based software. So just a lot of really, really good things happening. But anyway, back to the original question, I do believe that's something we could explore putting in our budget or just continue to negotiate with the university to carry a position like that.
Okay.
If I could add, the fire Jake talked about, the landlord called me because I happen to know him. And I asked to talk to the inspector, and what the inspector told me appalled me of what they found in that house. I think we have to be cognizant when we talk about housing in this city. Housing is at a premium, and there are people who take advantage, especially up in the university section. So an extra inspector up there can prevent a tragedy. There's no doubt about it. You know, with the desire for some of those people to maximize their profits. And I appreciate what Jake does with those, and the frankness he always shows when he deals with me as a city councilor. So that's all I got.
Question for you. First, I want to say thank you for the work that you do. I'm one of your biggest fans, even though it seems like I'm not. But without codes and our great department, I don't know where the city would be, so I'm a huge fan. Question about the rental registry. Will that be available to the public as far as being able to search it ever?
Yeah, we love all of our stuff to be transparent and available to anyone 24 hours a day online. It is available, but it's kind of quirky. The portal that we have has some vulnerabilities from an IT world, which I don't know a lot about, but they took the link down to access a lot of the information because they felt like it was like when the school district got hacked, IT took that down. So you can look up if one has one or not, but it's not real user friendly. So we're trying to come up with a better way into a new software and into even possibly the new website to put a list out of which ones should have one and then if they have one, valid or not. So it's not always clear cut or straightforward if you don't know exactly what to search for, but that's why we continue to just encourage people to call and ask. But education and outreach to the public, I mean, to people that maybe don't know, is something that we're looking into as well.
Is there money in here for that, for both the IT part and the education outreach?
There isn't, but we indirectly, like we did a big direct mailer to about 4,000 non-compliant rental registry owners and managers. So that was included in like the postage portion of our budget. And paper and stuff like that, office supplies. So it doesn't directly call it out. But we've also done something similar in the university area where we sent them kind of the rules and regs of, rental registry, certificate of compliance, certificate of suitability, parking. And that was kind of a precursor to expecting to get that additional inspector up in that neighborhood. Signage is another one. You get all these signage they don't come off the houses. They're leasing every day, right? It says for lease with a phone number and a property manager's name or something, which we don't necessarily know if they're not looking. So it's kind of a difficult thing, but it's something that just doesn't look that attractive. There's constantly a sign nailed on the front of a house. Students probably don't mind, but it's not the most appealing thing in the world. So yeah, we and then just through communication, I think with our periodic inspection coordinator team out of the permit office, we're doing a lot of outreach directly with owners. It's a lot of proactive calls and encouraging them to not only apply but to consent to let us inside. And I do want to mention the community ambassador program because that is giving us a connection to tenants that we never had before. To tenants that maybe have a language barrier, to tenants that maybe don't feel safe or comfortable with government or code enforcement, or they don't even know what code enforcement is or what we do. So when we struggle to get an owner to comply with the rental registry program, a referral goes to the community ambassador program. And the community ambassador in that neighborhood goes out and does direct outreach to the tenants to help connect them with us. So even if an owner doesn't apply and pay or doesn't want to consent to let us inside, we're going to the tenants for that. But it's very, we're careful in how we do so because we're cognizant of the fear of retaliation, which is real. But at the same time, we also we want tenants to know that they should have safe and healthy housing. It doesn't matter where they live, how much they pay in rent, whether they pay none of their rent out of their own pocket, whether it's subsidized, or it doesn't matter. So we're trying to really balance that, because we do recognize that is a real fear with tenants. They're like, well, if I let you in and you cite something, like, am I going to get in trouble? So we're working really, really closely with MBD and the community ambassador team to make sure that we're very careful on how we approach that. But the bottom line is we're in search of safe and healthy housing. Like, we want people to be comfortable working with our team. And for the most part, most landlords and tenants, when they do work with us, they find that, like, we're there for a specific need, and that we can coexist. Not everybody. I mean, there's always ones that we're going to have to send to court or to the BA to kind of use the stick to get them to comply. But we're all about just life safety standards and making sure that people have safe and healthy housing. And as Councilor Hogan mentioned, like, the market, the rent prices are high. For $1,000+ I mean, I think that's going on everywhere, but it's something that we recognize. Like, people don't want to leave a home that they're in to search for something else because there's not much available. So they just put up with what condition or environment they're in. So, it's a balancing act, and sometimes I think our team of inspectors are more like social workers when they're out there working with people. We're there for the property, but we're also in the middle of a very difficult time that we're seeing with, rent prices and, the moratorium, if money's owed, and all sorts of things. So it's been a challenging previous year and a half or so, but we're delicately working through that.
Thanks. So the Community Ambassador Program, I think it's great, and it's a creative way to solve this very real disconnect between the tenants and code enforcement. But it's also somewhat of a tacit acknowledgement that there is this gap, right, between code enforcement and the tenants that in an ideal world we wouldn't have, right? That the tenants in our city would have a trust or greater trust in code enforcement. So I guess, what do you see over the longer term, 10 years, 15 years? Is it that code enforcement will begin to develop its own relationships with the tenants, or is it the community ambassador going to always be there? What do you see as like the long-term solution to that?
Well, I don't think it's unique to code enforcement either. I think that, part of that is just government, and whether you want to say it's local government, federal government, state government, people just don't trust or don't know what services are out there. I'll be honest, I mean, before you got into government, how many people knew what code enforcement was and what it did? It's not something that is like real it sort of is self-explanatory, but people are like, what is that? Like, what do they do? Like, some people, we have a lot of new Americans. We have people from all over the world living here. They don't even know the service exists. And it's not that my team isn't approachable, but we don't have a lot of time just to be out there engaging with the public and knocking on doors. Like, we're inspecting buildings. We're going from apartment to apartment or building to building. So I feel like there always will be some sort of need there, and mainly because I think there's always going to be that trust factor, not with code enforcement, just with government in general. But I'll take it a step further. I think, and I'm very cognizant of building out a team that's diverse, that represents, our city's makeup. But that doesn't necessarily happen overnight. I have a civil service union workshop, and you kind of have to work off the list and all that good stuff. But with that said, these community ambassadors are representatives of the neighborhoods that they work in. People know them. They know their faces. They know their names. They're from that area. Now, all of us have different sides of the city that I think we're from or more comfortable working in, or just where you live or know. I mean, the districts that you all represent. So it's almost like that. The tenants in these areas are comfortable with these people. They trust them. They may speak a number of languages where I don't have staff that can, go down to the west side and necessarily engage in a full conversation in Spanish. But the community ambassador can. And I think that's the difference. And I'd love to get to a point where I could say we don't need them anymore because our staff is doing that public engagement. But what I will say on the national level, like what we're doing with that program is recognized on the national level, that we're one of the only or the only code enforcement program nationally that is using a third-party organization to connect with tenants to build safe and healthier housing.
And I think that's great. And I think the only other thing I would say, and this is a generational change, not a year change, but to the extent that we're able to use the community ambassadors to maybe even create a pipeline of applicants for future code enforcement, right? If there's people from the community that would say, not only can you trust code enforcement, but you should be in the department itself, right? And then I think that would, over time, help to develop that. The other question I have, is this enough? I mean, I think everyone on the council recognizes how important safe housing is. And do you feel like this budget provides you enough resources to do everything you want to do?
Yeah, for this upcoming year, definitely. You know, when I first took over as director, I had immediate goals, things that I wanted to change. I kind of have some midterm goals and some longer term goals. Our work is very challenging. The day-to-day work is very hard. Just the inspection portion, the enforcement portion of it. You know, those of you that have worked closely with us on the policy side know some of the challenges that we face. This definitely does, and I think part of it is, you know, as we look to work with MBD on some of the emergency abatement stuff, like we want to be as aggressive as we can. Or that's my take. I want to be as aggressive as we can against some of these landlords because, as again, like Councilor Hogan mentioned, these landlords are making money. You know, they're making significant amount on, you know, units for rent, whether you're in Tip Hill or West Side or Syracuse University. They have a responsibility to meet these minimum standards for safe and healthy housing, to provide that to their tenants no matter where they are. So this budget definitely does it. You know, it sets us up foundationally to start enforcing the lead program very, very soon. And it allows us to continue to build off our rental registry compliance rates. You know, from there, we like to still look into some policy side of things on the legal end. I'm looking at Councilor Driscoll because I think he knows some of the legal things that we face that can be frustrating, especially dealing with LLCs, change of ownership. Like they play this game where they change from, you know, 123 Main Street LLC to 123 Main Street 2 LLC, and it's like that's technically a new owner, so we have to like restart our legal case and recite them. So we're trying to do a number of things to just be creative and aggressive where we need to be. The BAA has been very, very helpful, I think. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we've more than quadrupled the BAA tickets that we issued last year. I mean, and that's a trend that's going to continue to rise because my objective and key result that I have with the mayor's office is to have our inspectors manage and work cases as aggressively as they can. And by the time a case reaches 30 days beyond the comply by date, which is typically 15 days on an average case. So 45 days total from violation, 45 days, the goal is it has to be referred to law or BAA within that time frame. If you can't get compliance within that time frame, then we need a referral to law or BAA. So that's the path that we're kind of taking on case management. Now there's outliers and exceptions, like obviously somebody can't paint their house in February, for example, so we'd grant an extension on something like that. But for the most part, we're trying to give people that we cite a 15-day comply by date, and then our inspection team has a 30-day window to work that case. And if they can't get to compliance, then they need to refer it somewhere.
It seems so long when you're out there, though. Like the one store, I think it's on Salina and Brighton.
With the windows.
The windows were busted. It was like I understood the process, but people in the community were like, "Oh my God, it's been 2 weeks." But I understood they had to like order the glass or something like that.
Yeah, there's a due process side of things too. Like we have to provide a violation notice in writing, and that has to be mailed by U.S. mail. You know, sometimes the owner's not local. And then we do have to give them a chance to get that, to be heard, and then give them an opportunity to make those repairs. There are some real supply chain issues right now. I'm not sure that was the real case with that window, but, you know, we are running into that a little bit with ordering things for repairs. But for the most part, if people are communicating with us and working with us, that's a good sign that they're probably going to take care of it. The people that we don't hear from or struggle to reach or communicate with are the ones that are probably not going to do anything. But yeah, to that point, I think we're going to explore using this emergency abatement fund to do some repairs for like furnaces, water heaters, sewer issues. You know, where if an owner's not doing that, you know, we'll step in and get that done and just, you know, bill them for it.
Okay, hold on one second. Are you guys, I don't know if you're going to talk about this in your budget hearing about the percentage of the rental registry. Do you guys have that yet? Or is she going to talk about
The compliance rate?
Yeah, the percentage of the rental registry at this point.
Yeah, I think we're right around 50% compliance. There's about 9,000 one or two family non-owner occupied rental units. The difference, I think, from previous budget years to this year is, and Budget Director Rudd will appreciate this, we are almost through the process of putting every owner, not on notice, but giving them a violation for failure to apply and obtain. It's not just a courtesy letter saying, hey, you need to be on the registry. It's, no, you're not on the rental registry, so here's a violation. You need to apply and obtain, and those are going to the BA if they don't. And I do think that's part of the success that we're seeing more recently in the number of applications that are coming in. And if you recall, this is a 3-year requirement. So it's the certificate of compliance, which is 3 family and up, and the rental registry, which is 1 and 2 family, non-owner occupied rentals. They're every 3 years, both of them. So my goal is by end of this calendar year, not even into next budget year, is to be at 75% come January 1, 2023. So we're making a hard push for it. We think this budget gives us the people in the permit office to take those applications in, and our inspectors using my goal of referring a case to BA if they can't get an application within 45 days, and continuing to send those tickets to the BA, I think will get us there. But I will point out, I don't have the exact number. Maybe Michelle recalls. We were in the low teens. 11%?
Oh, wow.
So, you know, 11% to nearly 50%. Sitting here saying we're only at 50% compliance doesn't sound good. I know it doesn't. I'm not satisfied. But knowing that we weren't citing people and requiring them to get on it, and we were at 11%. Over less than 2 years to get to 50%. I'll take it, and I think we're headed in the right direction. So while I'm not fully satisfied, I am happy with the progress.
Okay. So one last question, and I'll pass it on to you, okay? About the tablets, are all the inspectors, they all have tablets and they all have printers connected right to them so they can do all the work out in the field?
They don't have printers. Most of our work is generated back to a print queue in the office where we send out an actual official letter in the mail. We do have hard tickets, kind of like a parking ticket that I guess you would, like the paper kind, not the receipt looking ones. I think the police still have the big paper tickets, right? So our tickets kind of look like that. Yeah, no, I was thinking of the... Yeah, well, I haven't gotten one in a long time. I'm like, oh, do they just have? Are they all using like those printout ones that look like a receipt from the grocery store? But anyway, our tickets look like that, and when we do need to issue field citation tickets, like on the spot, we do use those for certain types of violations. It's mainly more property maintenance, like grass, overgrowth, trash, and debris, where we're issuing those. If we go in a house and do an inspection, and we fail, a few things, for example, we send out an actual letter later that afternoon or the next morning that goes out U.S. snail mail. But again, part of that is back to minimum requirements on how we have to provide notice to people by law. But they do have tablets. And this budget, well, I should speak to this because this is new. Tablet refurbishment and replacement. This will allow us to replace a third of the tablets a year. So every 3 years or so, we should be able to cycle through to new tablets. And anybody who has, one of these new smartphones, that's probably an average of when people are replacing their phones, I think, right? Maybe every 3 or 4 years.
Mine either.
No? But the goal is just having, because some of the tablets we do have are like the first tablets we've ever purchased as a city for our code enforcement staff, and they need to be replaced. And as we move on to hopefully new software, they'll be even more functional because all new software is going to be cloud-based, internet-based. Some of the apps that we have on some of the code enforcement software currently isn't the greatest, but it does give our inspection team resources out in the field to be able to look at information, give information to the public, and do some case management as well.
Jake, I wanted to go back to the community ambassador. Maybe the others already heard or know. How many do we have?
There are 4.
4. What, beside language and community knowledge, what other qualification do we look for in those folks?
I'll try to answer this the best I can, but the community ambassador program was really something out of MBD.
You want to have Michelle?
Yeah, I can have her kind of speak to the.
Sorry, Michelle.
It's okay. Michelle Spansky, Deputy Commissioner of Neighborhood Development. The center, the Peacemaking Center, is the kind of as the main program administrator of the ambassador program. They're the ones that develop the job description. It's
Peacemaker Center, you said?
The Syracuse Peacemaking Center.
Okay.
Yep. I am more than happy to provide a copy of what they've put together. It's intentionally designed to be, capture as wide of a kind of spectrum of potential candidates as possible. The ambassadors that are in place right now currently have a kind of spectrum of experience working at different human service agencies, previous experience with the school district. So the kind of work where they're in the community, have involvement with some level of case management, even if it wasn't necessarily housing. I would say probably 2 of the ambassadors had housing experience prior to taking these positions on. The other 2 didn't necessarily. Our idea is basically we can teach you the things that we need to make sure that you're advocating for around housing. We can't teach you the level of people skills and interfacing with the community. So.
How many of those are new Americans out of the 4?
1.
Just 1. Okay. Thank.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about court inspectors generally? Do we have any one of them that is new American that are?
No, we don't. But our inspector positions, as I mentioned earlier, are all civil service, union positions. So they're tested. The list comes out, and we have to work off the rule of 3, the civil service law. So we start at the top, and we go through interviews and work with HR to go through the canvassing and the interviews, and so we have to work within those constraints. But of the new hires we've made within the last 2 years, I feel like we've hired a diverse staff. We have the first 2 female code officials in the history of code enforcement as far as being inspectors out in the field. That's pretty unique just in the industry, throughout the country. So I'm proud to sit here and say we have 2 female housing inspectors.
Okay. So are you saying because of the civil service and the challenges that you get from it, that's probably part of the reason why you don't have any new American, or you just don't have anyone that apply?
Just haven't had anybody that's been on the list. So when the list comes out from the county after they take the exam through civil service, we have to work off that list.
Okay. Now, my last question, Counselor. So when you go into a building where you are doing inspection and you run into a situation where living conditions are unacceptable, what do? You just write a ticket and leave, or what? Are there some mitigating factors that you put in place to be able to help the person at
Sure.
that moment?
Yeah, our inspectors have we used to have these binders a couple of years ago. It's been digitized, but they pretty much know the resources that are available when we run into a situation like that. So let's say it's an unfit situation that somebody shouldn't be living in, just for a scenario. Let's say there's no heat. That immediately calls for an unfit declaration. Violation goes out. Tenant actually gets a notice as well that gives them direction to call social services, but we also connect them to Patty Lynch with an MBD to help provide them with other housing arrangements if that's the case. Sometimes people can find people to go stay with on their own. Sometimes people are don't have any help or resources to relocate. So we do refer them to both County DSS and also Patty to try to help them with anything that she can help provide them, whether it's even if it's as simple as something like, well, let me help you get food stamps or something like that. Like, she will help with anything, and she'll go out and meet with them. But then we also do a number of things. We issue stop rent to all the agencies that are providing rent payments. So if there are rent payments coming in for that tenant, then those are stopped immediately as well. So it does a couple of things. It hopefully gives the owner some incentive to fix the violation, but it's also providing options for the tenant to get out of that situation. Very rarely is it so extreme, like imminent danger, like explosion or like risk of collapse, where we are actually saying like you need to get out like right now. That's pretty rare.
Do we have, in that sense, with Patty Lynch and other, do we have any relocation resources as a city that we allocate to say, okay, if this person, if this individual community member is in a situation where the living conditions are unacceptable and they need to get out, do we have resources that we have allocated to help facilitate that process as a city, as opposed to reaching to social service? Because I know social service takes forever. It takes forever. Now, have we thought about that? Have we put anything in place to be able to help facilitate that process at all?
Yeah, they usually go to like Catholic Charities and places like that. They help with relocation services in that case. But in like Patty would then reach out to like Catholic Charities or the Salvation Army, Rescue Mission, things like that.
But do we have any, so assume that they are reaching to this, do we have resources that we actually put behind all of this, or is it just a phone calls to connect them to whatever?
Well, I think a lot of these systems for resources and help are in place, so we're making those referrals. Michelle?
We do fund a portion of our community development block grant and emergency solutions grant to Catholic Charities for that purpose.
Okay, thank you. So CDBG does do that part. Okay, I'm all set.
Okay, you had a question, right?
I have a question and I have a comment. First off, 211 is a great resource as well when you're out in the community to get them to the resources they need. And secondly, this is a humor me question. Do we know between all of the MBD departments how many rentals are not owned by local people?
I don't think we do. And again, I'm sorry to keep deferring to Michelle, but she's the data guru here.
So local being defined as outside of the city limits, or what, I guess within what geography?
The LLCs, how many rentals are owned by LLCs off your head?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. We can certainly get that information for you if you're interested. I think the biggest thing with it is just kind of specificity around, are we just looking at LLC ownership versus out-of-town ownership, because it can be different.
I
And
would like to see both.
okay, yep, we can certainly pull some information on that.
I think, Nader, you wanted to ask a question, right?
Nader Maroon, City Auditor. Thank you, Jake, and your staff for what you do, and I was interested in terms of the catchment areas and how you divvied up. So 10 years ago, we talked about having the tablets basically trying to adhere to the nail and mail process. And the tablets were intended to come in and provide the inspectors with the opportunity to have access to their reference material so that they could cite right there. They could print with the printers and avoid having to come to the office in the morning, get their assignment, go do the inspections, come back to the office and put the information into the print queue, and then the next day go back out and do the nail part of that. Has that been eliminated? And context, I'm sorry. The reason I ask is at the time that that was presented, it was saying that we had so many properties that needed to be inspected. We had limited number of inspectors, and we were trying to expedite the process. So now you've expanded the number of inspectors, you've got the catchment areas. You talk about tablets that we still have from 10 years ago, I'm assuming. So what's improved in that whole process to both expedite and to be efficient?
Sure. I can't speak to the printer portion of what you're describing, but to my knowledge, we've never found any compatible printer that we would bring out in the field, or it's nothing that I've personally been involved with exploring. We are still on IPS, which is the company BAS, which is our code enforcement software. It's not cloud-based. The app has some limitations, but we will be exploring that with the digital services team moving forward, looking for new software. So we're not providing an immediate NAL, which is notice of delivery of a violation. So let's say you live in Chittenango as an owner. We're going to mail you a copy of your violation to your house, ownership in Chittenango, but then we're going to deliver the violation notice to the property, to the subject property. So it might not happen that day because we don't have printing capabilities to just print off that violation notice. But there's certain things that have to be within the letter, and this is more of a legal side of things on what has to be in there. So I don't know why it never happened years and years ago, but I was involved with those conversations. But I don't think it slows us down, and I think our inspectors are out in these neighborhoods anyway, so dropping off a posting, if I'm in Tipperary Hill, I should be driving down Avery Ave almost daily. If I need to drop off a letter, it takes 5 seconds to run up on the porch and stick it on the front door. And then your comment about the maybe not having the inspectors come in from a management side of things, I prefer having my team come in every morning. Managing a staff that's out in the field is difficult enough as it is. Not seeing them on a daily basis, which happened during COVID, makes it even more challenging. And maybe that's a management challenge, but I would never want my team to not come into the office. I think we're talking about things, we're problem solving. Not having them in an office would be very, very difficult to efficiently manage a team that are primarily based out in the field. So I prefer that. I think it's a better management system for them, but it provides the support that they need. I mean, they're constantly asking questions. Hey, how should I handle this? I ran into this situation. And we have a lot of new people too, so a lot of it is just learning, and the codes are changing constantly, and we're trying to make our processes as efficient as possible. So just back to your question, I don't think the tablets have really slowed down our process at all. It probably hasn't improved at all either. It's probably just been the same. But I think we have the staffing levels to allow us to manage the print queue, which, not to confuse everybody, but all the violations that come in on one day go into this list, and somebody has to go through and kind of look them over and make sure we have ownership correct, and actually send it to a physical printer, prints it out, stuffs an envelope, and it goes out in the mail. But a lot of our tickets, a lot of our quality of life issues, whether it's trash and debris or like overgrowth, we are using hard tickets. So one goes out in the mail and there's a copy that does get posted immediately. So we are still doing that. It's the ones where we go inside and maybe cite broken windows, carbon monoxide alarms, smoke detectors, whatever the case may be. Those are the ones that are generating a letter the next day that goes out in the mail, and then one gets delivered. So we do not have a printer that can, as far as I've never seen a printer that can do to handle the needs that we need, where we could have those in a car. I mean, maybe that exists, but I'm not aware of it if it does.
So, just again, can you explain to me, each day an inspector comes into the office, and then by the time that they get to their sites for inspection, and then they come back at the end of the day, each inspector comes back at the end of each day, and they put the information in the print queue, then they can't do that from the site when they do it off the tablet?
No, it can happen off the tablet.
Can happen, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's more than just inputting inspection results. I mean, as I mentioned, our inspectors are constantly engaging with people, whether it's homeowners, neighbors, tenants, property managers. Like, we're on the phone a lot, we're emailing a lot, we're trying to be the best communicators that we can be, which is why customer service, I'm valuing customer service more than ever in this position. We need to engage with people in positive manner and problem solve to get things closed out. So it's more than just inputting the results of the day. They're coming back to the office, and they're on the phones, they're working their cases, they're working with the BAA team, they're working with the housing attorneys, they're working with the zoning office, like whoever they need to be communicating with. So it's much more than just data input when they're in the office in the mornings and the afternoons. It's preparing them for success to successfully manage their caseloads.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Yes.
By the way, Jake, I obviously we deal a lot together, a couple times a day sometimes, and Medea, and I just want to say that I think you're doing a great job. You always have done a great job since you've been in that position. You made order out of chaos, basically what it was. And, I don't care how you manage your department because you get things done. I particularly want to compliment you on what Councilor Green said about the Community Ambassadors Program. In my experience with the city, I can't believe a department head who would actually work with somebody from outside the system as well as you have. They are key, especially on the near west side, as far as talking to people, negotiating with people and all that. And Patty Lynch, there's a special place in heaven for her, for sure.
Yeah.
Because she's done an incredible job. And when you talk about like scarcity housing, that's something that us as a council should address, and we have addressed, and I've been proud of this council for doing that. We desperately need more housing in the city. We're going to be talking about the CDBG thing lately. But what I feel, to use a sports analogy, not that I haven't used one before, the codes department's like a great starting pitcher. And we get to the 7th inning, and then we have to bring the relievers in. And the relievers are usually our one person at the law department who presents the case to housing court and housing court. And when you mentioned Avery Avenue, I had a smile, because there's a logging operation on Avery Avenue in case anybody wants to drive by it. And we cited, and they end up in court, and the housing court judge says, it's not so bad.
Okay.
So is there anything we can do as legislators, like, to help you out at all? Like as far as fines or something like that? Can we up the fines and things like that? Would help you out?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, I wanted to explore increasing the BAA fines. Starting out, some of the fines are as low as $50 or $150, which, to some people that could be a lot of money, but surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, we see a lot of people that will pay the fine amounts, but then not fix the violation.
Right, and what we had, and for folks who are unaware, like some of us, some new counselors might be aware, the BAA can only put a lien on the property at the end, right? Basically, is that right, Michelle? I mean, we got a lawyer? Yeah. Lee, you're right. We can only put a lien.
Yeah, it's just civil fines and penalties at the end. We issue a default decision and order for which we would then file locally with city court as a judgment and then transcript it to the county clerk to put a lien on the property. That's a process that we haven't fully implemented yet.
Still haven't worked through the idea of putting those fines and everything else onto the taxes, correct? Have we done that?
No,
No.
like we've discussed in the past, that under the current state legislation, that can't happen. The state legislation would need to be rehabbed to do that.
Has the administration made any kind of efforts to like present that to any of our state representatives?
I'm not aware if we have, or not.
Well, yeah, there's a certain, you have to hit a certain,
There's a whole bunch of restrictions with the state legislation, and it was more drafted for a different tax process than we have locally in Syracuse. Each municipality has their own process. Our process doesn't require judicial notice or anything, so the process that we have doesn't directly align with the way the state legislation is crafted. And in addition, the biggest restriction is you can't roll it onto the taxes if they corrected the underlying violation. So even if you have thousands of dollars of judgments against a specific property and the owner, if they eventually fix the violation, you can't roll them on. It has to hit a certain threshold of value for the home. There's a bunch of restrictions that make it not really usable.
so we could craft a resolution to our state legislators to like address that situation.
Correct.
You guys would help us out, of course, I imagine, so. I mean, that's what I'm, because what Councilor Allen brought up beforehand, we go to neighborhood meetings and they go, what about 547 Bear Street? And you go, codes is cited, it's gone to BAA, they've issued fines and nothing happens. And that's the problem, because at the end, we don't have that hammer to address those situations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all open to any policy changes or any however creative we can get. I mean, looking at Joe, I know we have this kind of monthly or maybe bi-monthly working group that's just titled Codes Working Group, where we talk through some of these things where it's just like, what can we do differently? And we're seeing some of it come to light, like this emergency abatement program that, Rochester is doing it. We think we already have the legal grounds in place to pull this off. So Corp Council thinks that can, take place immediately without really making any changes. But, I'm open for any policy changes that you think we can make on a local level to address some of these things. But as you stated, when we get something all the way to court and a judge decides to dismiss a case, I don't know how we change that other than maybe meeting with some of the judges, which I haven't personally done. I don't know if any.
Yeah, we did that once before when I was on. Well, maybe it's because of me. But
And they're
you know
elected
what?
Did you get confrontation?
The one, no. But I want to, and Lee, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you, the mask on, and BAA's done great, but that housing court issue, I mean, that to be something maybe with, maybe even the leadership in the council on us sitting down with some of the, because housing court, they shift it every month, right? Who's in charge, or every 3 months or something like that, so it'd have to be all the judges.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you're going.
I'm just curious, if we could hear from Medea a little bit, because we're also talking about permitting here, and I remember when we came on, that was the big focus of the administration, was getting more consistent turnarounds with permits, shorter time periods with permits. Do you guys have any updates on how that's all going? Are we seeing data that we're getting more consistent turnaround, shorter turnarounds for permits?
Yeah.
So hold on one second. Was your question relative to the previous conversation or something separate?
Different.
Okay, all right, go ahead, and then you can go after.
So I'm not sure who here is aware of everything that we've done, but there's been a lot of a significant legwork that's gone into improving permitting comprehensively and licensing as well. A lot of that started with even cleaning up the physical office. Once upon a time, we would have customers come in and plans could not be located. So you have X customer coming in and you can't provide a status update on plans that are MIA. So one of the first efforts was to clean up the office so that we had some sort of initial physical organizational system that involved into what we've launched as a digital transformation of the office. So that included initially digital plan review, which made permitting and plan review possible during COVID especially, but has continued on. In addition to that, we've launched a new digital permit management system, which has been incredibly helpful. We've also seen the significant impact of that. As you all may or may not know, recently we lost all of our front office staff earlier on in the year, and without those digital mechanisms in place, we would not have been able to issue our electrical and HVAC permits, which actually take up the most volume of permits. We've made significant efforts to focus on commercial plan review specifically, so we've decreased those review times. Last month, we actually hit our highest number of permitted values in terms of construction. We permitted $153 million worth of construction, which would bring in about $600,000 in revenue for this city, which is amazing. It's an all-time high. So I think that we're starting to see the benefits of all of the legwork that we've done previously. We've also launched our right-of-way improvement project, which has allowed us to take a look at right-of-way permitting and inspections, and we've been working with our API office and digital services in order to investigate that through and through. And we're not at a point where we're able to implement solutions quite yet, but we are working on the ideation around that and quickly would like to develop some solutions around that, in addition to increasing transparency around permitting as well. You go to any other agency like the DMV, you get in line and you're able to see I am, number 456 and I'm third in line. We don't have that transparency due to just our software limitations. So we're looking to, in the interim, while we configure additional permit types, we're looking to bring that transparency forward because our customers need that. And that will allow us to also remove some of that stigma behind permitting, in that we're not just twiddling our thumbs when we're coming into the office. We're working really hard, and we've had significant staffing shortages as well, and we've tried to really navigate that. So without all of that in place, we would have really been buried over the last year in particular.
Great. I know Councilor Schultz has a question, but I would just like to echo Councilor Hogan's comments. I interact with both of you very frequently on email, and I'm just always blown away by your tenacity and responsiveness. And I know you guys both have hard jobs, and we really appreciate it. But I'll pass to Councilor Schultz.
Really quickly, if I could, you mentioned parking early on. And can you elaborate on what work code says with parking in a short response, since I know we're almost out of time?
Sure. A lot of it was specific to the neighborhood within the university area, but whether it's parking on front lawns, parking across sidewalks, parking, like illegal paving in the backyard, where like we've seen houses, they take out all the grass and just blacktop everything. Then there's water, storm runoff issues, neighbors' yards start to get flooded, stuff like that. So addressing issues like that to make sure that parking surfaces are compliant, but also that doesn't look horrible, or people are blocking sidewalks, or the front yard is a mud pit because a car is always parked there.
Good to know. All right, one last question. Scooters. How much do those scooters and bikes get called into your office? Like if they're blocking sidewalks, people just leave them?
I have yet to see a complaint on that to me. So
is that your purview though? Would it be?
If it's something that's left in the right of way, it'd be similar to a car blocking a sidewalk, so that would be police related. But a lot of the times it comes through us and we just funnel that. I'll directly call Sergeant Romaine and he'll get right on it. But has that been an issue?
Well, I think if we drive around the city, they're because they don't have racks anymore. They can just leave them wherever.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I would say working with Neil Burke and police on that, and the vendor. I will say visiting other cities, it's kind of the same way. They're randomly all over the place. But yeah, we can probably come up with a solution. But I would direct it to someone else, but I've yet to see one come in to us directly.
Okay, thanks.
All right, no further questions? All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.